On a rain-soaked road, a struggling single mother's car breaks down in the middle of nowhere, her business on the brink of collapse, her future hanging by a thread. As she fights against the storm, a stranger appears, offering help without asking for anything in return, except a few quiet words that will change the course of her life forever. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video and tell us where you're watching from. If this story moved you, we'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let us know what you think. Now, let's jump into the story. The rain had been falling since morning, heavy and relentless, washing the color out of the world. Claire Dawson gripped the steering wheel as if holding on tighter might keep her life from slipping away. Beside her in the back seat, her 7-year-old son Liam kicked his shoes softly against the car seat. It had been the kind of day that felt like an unending test. At sunrise, Claire had stood in her office, facing her small team as the news spread. The company's largest investor had pulled out. The deal she had counted on for months was gone. The media had already begun calling her venture a sinking ship. Messages from worried suppliers filled her phone. By lunchtime, her dream of saving her eco-friendly packaging company had shrunk into a desperate hope. Now, on a lonely stretch of back road, the engine coughed once and fell silent. The dashboard lights dimmed. The car rolled to a stop against the rhythm of the rain. "Mom, why aren't we moving?" Liam's voice was small, curious, but worried. Claire forced a smile into her words. "The car's just taking a short break, sweetheart." Liam hugged his small backpack close, the fabric worn from years of school runs and weekend trips. "Is it broken?" "Maybe just tired," Claire said, her own voice softer now. She tried the ignition again. Nothing. She pressed the phone to her ear, calling roadside assistance. The automated voice answered with the same message 3 times. "All operators are currently busy." Her shoulders slumped. Outside, the rain thickened, blurring the trees and road into a gray curtain. She knew she couldn't just sit there. "Stay here, Liam," she said as she unbuckled her seatbelt. "I'm going to check the car." The cold hit her as soon as she stepped out. Her shoes slid on the wet asphalt. Water ran down her hair and soaked into her jacket. She opened the hood, staring at the tangle of metal and wires she didn't understand. Closing it with a loud thud, she moved to the back, pressing her shoulder into the trunk to push the car further off the road. Her breath came hard, her hands slipping against the rain-slick surface. Then a voice cut through the sound of the storm. "Easy there. Let me give you a hand." She turned to see a tall man walking toward her, his boots steady against the wet ground. His worn jacket clung to his shoulders, dark with rain. A smear of grease marked one side of his arm. His eyes were calm, and his voice carried the weight of someone used to solving problems without making them bigger. From the cracked window of the car, Liam called out, "Are you a superhero?" The man's mouth curved into a faint smile. "Just a mechanic, kiddo." Without another word, he slipped off his heavy jacket and placed it over Claire's shoulders. The warmth startled her. Together they moved the car to a safer spot. He opened the hood, working with quick, sure movements. The sound of tools clicking against metal replaced the noise of the rain for a few minutes. Then, with a twist of his hand, the engine roared back to life. Claire reached into her bag, pulling out a folded $100 bill. "Please, take this," she said, her voice trembling. "I've lost everything today. My job, my savings, and now the car." He looked at the money, then at Liam, who was watching him through the rain-flecked glass. Gently, he pushed Claire's hand back. "You still have him," he said quietly. "That's enough payment for today." The words landed deeper than she expected. She nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "Thank you," she finally whispered. He stepped back toward his pickup. "Drive safe. Keep the jacket until you're warm again." Claire slid into the driver's seat. Liam's face broke into a grin. "Bye, Mr. Mechanic," he waved through the window. In the rearview mirror, Claire saw the man standing in the rain, one hand lifted in farewell. She started the engine, pulling back onto the road. The rain still fell, the clouds still pressed low, but the air inside the car felt different. For the first time all day, Claire felt the smallest shift, like maybe, just maybe, the road ahead wouldn't be impossible after all. 2 days after the breakdown in the rain, Claire Dawson found a small drawing propped against her coffee mug. Liam had woken early and sat at the kitchen table with his crayons. Now, bold lines of green and blue filled the paper, spelling out the words "Thank you" in uneven letters. In the middle stood 3 stick figures, one tall, one shorter, and a little boy with a wide smile. "Is that us?" Claire asked, pouring his cereal. Liam nodded proudly. "It's me, you, and the man who fixed the car. I think his name should be Mr. Mechanic." Before she could respond, Liam had another idea. "We should take him cookies, the chocolate chip kind, the soft ones." Claire hesitated. Stop. She wasn't sure showing up unannounced was a good idea. But by the time they left for school, she found herself pulling butter and flour from the cupboard. Baking cookies with Liam was their weekend tradition. But today, the kitchen smelled of warm sugar and something else. A quiet gratitude she didn't know how to explain. That afternoon, when Claire picked Liam up from school, the sky was pale with late-day sun. They drove past the turn for home, following a narrow road that led to the edge of town. There, beside an old gas station, stood a small garage with a hand-painted sign that read Cole's Auto Repair. Liam spotted the pickup parked outside and pointed. "He's here." Claire pulled in, meaning to stay in the car while Liam delivered the cookies. But the moment she turned to hand him the container, he had already hopped out, his small sneakers splashing in a shallow puddle. She followed quickly, her shoes clicking against the concrete floor of the open bay. Liam stood in front of Nathan Cole, holding the plastic box like it was something precious. "I made these with my mom," Liam announced. "They're for you." Nathan looked at the cookies, then at Liam. "Best gift I've had all week," he said, taking the box carefully and setting it on a nearby workbench. Claire caught his eye. "Sorry for showing up like this," he insisted. Nathan shook his head. "No need to apologize. It's nice to see you both." A faint smell of oil and warm metal hung in the air, but it wasn't unpleasant. Nathan poured coffee from an old pot in the corner and offered Claire a mug. She hesitated, then accepted. As they sat on a pair of worn stools near the open bay door, the late afternoon light slanted across the floor. Liam wandered to a corner where an old tire leaned against the wall, tracing its grooves with his fingers. Nathan leaned back, resting one arm on the counter. "So what do you do, Claire, when you're not stranded on the side of the road?" She smiled faintly. "I run a company that makes biodegradable packaging. Or at least I used to run it without constant panic. It's been rough lately. My dad was a carpenter. He taught me to build things, real things, before he died in an accident at his shop. I guess I wanted to build something lasting in my own way." Nathan nodded slowly. "My dad was a mechanic. I grew up in places like this. But for a while, I raced cars. Local tracks, sometimes bigger circuits. Then there was a crash. My best friend didn't make it out. I never went back." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It felt like they were sharing something that didn't need to be explained in too many words. Both had lost people they thought would always be there. Both had learned to keep moving anyway. Liam returned with a curious look on his face. "Mom, did you know he used to drive really fast?" Claire laughed, shaking her head. "No, I didn't." Nathan's mouth curved into the smallest smile. That was a long time ago. The conversation drifted to lighter things. Liam's favorite books, the best way to make cookies stay soft, whether the rain might finally stop for more than a day. But underneath, there was a sense of something taking root. Not friendship, not yet, but the kind of understanding that made strangers feel less like strangers. When it was time to leave, Nathan walked them to the car. "Thanks for the cookies," he said, looking at Liam. "And for the company." Liam grinned. "We can make more next time." Claire started to tell him they might not have a next time, but she didn't. Instead, she met Nathan's eyes and gave a small nod. As she drove away, the sun dropped lower, painting the road ahead in shades of gold and shadow. She couldn't explain it, but the air in the car felt lighter, as if a small corner of the day had been patched back together. A week after their quiet afternoon in the garage, Claire sat at her desk, staring at an email that could change everything. The subject line read, "Proposal from Summit Global." The company name carried weight, deep pockets, worldwide reach, and a reputation for swallowing small businesses whole. The offer inside was generous. Summit Global wanted to buy a controlling share of Claire's eco-friendly packaging company. They promised to keep her as CEO, invest millions, and stabilize the business overnight. On paper, it was salvation. In reality, it felt like a trap. She hesitated, reading the letter again. The words were smooth, confident, and full of promises. But one sentence in the attached profile made her stomach twist. Formerly a primary sponsor in professional racing circuits. Claire's mind flashed to Nathan's quiet voice in the garage, telling her about the crash that ended his career, the faulty part, and the friend he'd lost. 2 days later, Claire walked into Summit Global's headquarters. The boardroom was all glass and chrome, with a view of the city stretching into the haze. Across the table sat a man in a tailored suit, his smile polished. He spoke about potential growth, strategic partnerships, and how her company just needed the right direction. Behind him, on the wall, hung a large framed photo. 2 young men in racing suits stood side by side, smiling at the camera. Claire recognized one of them instantly, Nathan. The other must have been his teammate. The man in the suit noticed her gaze. "We sponsored that team years ago," he said lightly. "Great publicity. Shame how it ended." Shame. The words sat heavy in her chest. She finished the meeting, her answers polite but distant, and walked out into the sharp autumn air. By the time she reached her office, the decision was made. That evening, she drove to the garage. Nathan was bent over the hood of a car, his hands deep in the engine. She told him about the offer, about the photo, about the connection to the crash. When she finished, he set his wrench down and looked at her for a long moment. "You walked away from it," he said quietly. "I couldn't take their help, not knowing what it cost you," Claire replied. His expression softened, something unspoken passing between them. Then he said, "Most people would have signed and told themselves it wasn't personal." "I'm not most people," she answered. Nathan nodded once. "Then let's make it personal. Let's take them down." From that night forward, they worked together. Nathan reached out to old contacts from the racing world, mechanics, pit crew members, even retired drivers. Claire contacted journalists she trusted, people who valued truth over headlines. They began to collect records, photographs, and witness accounts that pointed to years of negligence and cover-ups. Just as momentum was building, Claire was hit with another blow. A thick envelope from her attorney waited on her kitchen counter one evening. Inside was a notice. Her ex-husband's parents were filing for custody of Liam. The claim was sharp and cold. Her unstable finances and public business troubles made her unfit to provide stability for her son. Claire's hands trembled as she read the words. Liam was the one constant she had fought to protect. The thought of losing him cut deeper than any business failure. When Nathan stopped by later with notes from a phone call, she handed him the letter. He read it once, his jaw tightening. "We'll fight it," he said simply, no hesitation in his voice. The days that followed blurred together. By day, Claire met sources in quiet cafes, cross-checking old racing contracts and safety reports. By night, she worked with her lawyer to prepare for the custody hearing. Nathan was always there, dropping off takeout when she skipped meals, brewing coffee when she worked past midnight, keeping Liam's spirits up with small projects in the garage. One night, when the weight felt too heavy to carry, Nathan knocked on her door. "Come on," he said. "Bring Liam." They drove with the windows down, the cool night air rushing in. The city lights faded into open road, then to the dark stretch of the coast. They stopped at a bluff where the ocean spread out like black glass, the waves whispering against the rocks below. Liam ran ahead, chasing the wind. Claire stood beside Nathan, her hair lifting in the breeze. "You don't have to do this alone," he said quietly. For weeks, she had braced herself against every fight, not realizing someone was already standing beside her. She turned to him, the truth settling in. In that moment, with the ocean breathing below and her son's laughter carried on the air, Claire believed, truly believed, that she was not alone in this battle. The story broke on a Tuesday morning. Claire was in her office, reviewing another grim set of numbers, when her phone began buzzing non-stop. Headlines spread across every major news site. Insider sources expose racing scandal. Summit Global under fire for deadly cover-up. The articles were detailed and damning. They named the executives who had approved faulty parts, published falsified safety reports, and paid witnesses to stay silent. Photos, contracts, and statements from former crew members filled the pages. In each piece, Claire's decision to reject Summit's buyout was held up as proof of integrity. By midday, her inbox was overflowing. Former clients who had left returned with new contracts. Investors who had doubted her were now asking for meetings. Suppliers reinstated agreements she thought were gone for good. For the first time in months, the tide was turning in her favor. But one battle still remained. The custody hearing was scheduled for the following week. On the day of the hearing, Claire wore a simple navy dress and pulled her hair into a neat knot. Liam clung to her hand before being led to a family waiting room. Across the aisle, her ex-husband's parents sat with stiff expressions, their lawyer arranging papers on the table. When it was Nathan's turn to speak, Claire sat forward, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Nathan spoke clearly and without hesitation. He told the court about Claire's dedication to her son, how she made him breakfast before school, even after late nights at work, how she attended every school play, how she listened when Liam spoke as if nothing else in the world mattered. "She doesn't just love her son," Nathan said, his voice steady. "She lives for him." The room was quiet for a long moment. Even the judge paused before continuing. When the ruling came, it was decisive. Full custody remained with Claire. The petition was dismissed. She felt the relief wash over her so strongly she had to sit down. When Liam returned, she knelt to wrap her arms around him and held him as if she would never let go. Outside the courthouse, Nathan was waiting by the steps. Liam ran to him first, his laughter ringing through the late afternoon air. Claire followed more slowly, her gratitude unspoken but clear in her eyes. A week later, Claire stood before the board of her company. Business was improving, contracts were returning, and investor confidence was rebuilding. They wanted her to stay on as CEO to lead them through the recovery. She smiled, then shook her head. "I'm proud of what we've built," she said. "But I've been running at a sprint for too long. I'm stepping down as CEO. I'll stay on as a consultant, but I want to make space for the rest of my life." There was surprise around the table, then nods of understanding. By the end of the meeting, her decision was accepted. Weeks later, the sign above a small building on the edge of town read, "Cole and Dawson Auto and Brew." The garage took up one side, with Nathan's tools lined neatly in rows and the floor swept clean. The other side was a cozy coffee corner with mismatched chairs, shelves of fresh cookies, and a small art nook where Liam kept his crayons and paper. On a Friday afternoon, Nathan called Claire over to the open bay door. Sunlight poured in, lighting up a pale blue car parked in the center. Claire stopped in her tracks. It was her father's old car, restored to perfection. "How did you?" she began. "Took some work to track it down," Nathan said, his voice calm. "Figured you might want it." Her hand ran over the smooth hood, memories of her father's voice and steady hands flooding back. "You fixed it," she whispered. "Every bolt," he said with a small smile. Claire blinked back tears. "Why would you do this?" Nathan shrugged lightly. "Some things are worth bringing back." That evening, the three of them sat on the wide wooden step outside the shop. Liam leaned against Claire's side, drawing in his notebook, while Nathan sipped from a chipped coffee mug. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in gold and rose. The air smelled faintly of boil and fresh coffee. Claire looked out at the quiet road, the open fields beyond. It wasn't the life she once imagined. No skyscrapers, no corner office. But it was steady, warm, and real. Nathan's hand found hers, his touch steady and grounding. Liam glanced up at them, smiling before returning to his drawing. In that moment, Claire understood. Losing everything had made space for something better. Not just a rebuilt career, but a home filled with trust, laughter, and a kind of love that could weather any storm.